Hello, everybody. This is Natural Freedom League. I am John Wydogen here with my co-host, Chill Will Keller. And today we have a very special guest, two very special guests, Crrow and Jason from the podcast radio show Crrow777 Radio, spelled Crrow. 777radio.com is where you find them. Hello, guys.
Howdy. Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. All right, I'm going to do a brief introduction. This is straight from the website, Crrow777 Radio, Crrow777radio.com. Crrow has spent most of his life challenging the world around us. On the tail of years of telescopic filming, which gained worldwide attention, this podcast was launched. This Crrow777 Radio Podcast is meant to be a place where everything is challenged and people are free to communicate their ideas. The one rule here is to be a higher-minded human being and be polite. The foundational idea that drives this site can be summed up in the following statement: belief is the enemy of knowing. And Jason Lindgren is the longtime co-host on Crrow777 Radio, a musician, a filmmaker, and also a host of his own podcast, The Secrets of Saturn. The taglines for your show, guys, are belief is the enemy of knowing, and there is no lie in nature. Can you tell us what those statements mean to you? And we'll start with you, Crrow.
Yeah, belief is the enemy of knowing. It occurred to me years ago as I was doing that. I would try to boil things down in a way that I can think about it, because I came to the conclusion, if you have a grievance, you've got to identify the foundation of the grievance. And so what I realized is that I had all these beliefs that I built up my whole life, and it was preventing me from using common sense, because once you believe in a thing, you no longer challenge it. It's just accepted. And what's worse is some of the beliefs we take on board, they're very hard to undo because we've believed in them for so long. So that was the root of that. And as I moved along, I realized that common sense was one of the main things that we've lost. We believe in so many things that a common sense person will not accept right out of the gate. And so I looked, how do we have a measuring stick for what we should accept and what we shouldn't? And I realized it's nature. Nature is perfect in its presentation, and it is the perfect measuring stick to gauge everything by. So that's how I got there.
What about you, Jason?
Well, I take them pretty literal. Those are both Crrow's statements that he came up with on his own. But belief is the enemy of knowing is literally just as it sounds on the surface. If you believe something, that means you're accepting it as fact without necessarily having proof. And knowing means you found proof of something. And as far as the nature is concerned, nature is reality. It is where we come from. And that's it. Everything else, anything that's man-made, that's where you're kind of getting into trouble, isn't it?
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's it's ultimately the two dialectics of natural and artificial, and belief is really the issue with humans. The artificial beliefs are, mental constructs, these false axioms that people need to unlearn. The programming and the conditioning from pretty much birth, it runs so deep, these generational conditions, and really taking the step to question, go on that quest, and define what is natural, and ultimately be the seeker of truth, and knowing and understanding it is discoverable, and it's out there.
So, in looking at, go ahead, Crrow.
The thing.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, one of the things I realized was when you set out to identify falsehood, I realized that I could boil that down as well. Where I always start is by asking a simple question: is this natural or is it man-made? And that's where I launch from every time on every topic.
Yeah, up to a few years ago, I had this saying that I think I made up, but I've heard other people say it since then. But it was that it's not what you know, it's who you choose to believe. And as I got into a little bit deeper understanding of what's going on in the world, I realized it's actually all about what you know and what you can know and how you can know it. One of the ways that you guys got into looking at nature was Crow. You started filming the moon, and you discovered some strange things as you started shooting the moon. The name of your documentary is Shoot the Moon. It was amazing. I watched it recently. My question is, if you could explain to us what the lunar wave is.
Well, to a couple things out of the gate here. To be fair, I can't tell you certainly what the lunar wave is. I suspect a few things. And another thing everyone should be aware of is if I had to rename it today, it would not be called the lunar wave. It would probably be called something like the firmament wave. That wave has been filmed a number of times in front of Jupiter and Saturn. So at the very least, we can demonstrate you could detect it anywhere in the ecliptic or the path of the sun, moon, and planets. And maybe anywhere in the sky, but that remains to be shown because you have to have something pretty bright to backlight it. For people who haven't seen it, I can't imagine there's many people around who haven't seen it. The 2012 capture, which I filmed accidentally, is probably the best example that I'm aware of. There are so many examples that I don't even know how many examples exist anymore. But it looks as if you were looking at an old tube television from the 70s and someone took an old VHS camera and filmed that rolling wave that you can detect. But that's just the closest I can come to describe it. It's actually more surprising than that. But in the 2012 capture, as there's two waves every time in a true lunar wave, as the wave crosses the moon, it displaces the entire image of the moon twice, like you're looking through water. I suspect that it is related to the firmament. And as I said many years ago, I suspect a better description of so-called space would be a liquid of some sort.
Jason, did you have anything to add?
Well, I used to joke around all the time that, all right, you've shot this moon thing a whole bunch of times. Then someone came along and did Jupiter. And then a little while later, someone got another Jupiter with 4 moons. And that was quite impressive. I was like, all right, man, get that scope out and get me Saturn. And lo and behold, a year later, someone did get Saturn. So yeah, it seems to be whatever the effect actually is, for lack of a better term, it seems to be something that's of the whole sky, not necessarily a single object.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was thinking that it kind of looked like, if anyone is familiar with using iMovie, it's the transition, the wipe transition. That's kind of what it looks like. It's like it just wipes over the moon, and then the moon appears underneath it. But it's like, it looks like a rolling line of some sort. Why do you think the objects that you filmed in front of the moon, because you guys or Crow, you caught a lot of objects transiting in front of the moon, which appear as like black dots or black triangles. Why do you think that those objects are man-made?
Well, this goes back to how do you reason out a thing? And so using nature as my measuring device every time and asking a simple question, is this natural or man-made? There it is. There's really no room for anything else. And we don't have an example of everything else. We've got a lot of talk. We've got a lot of supposition that gray aliens like to mess with our butts for some reason, but I'm not accepting that nonsense. If something exists in this world, like a new car, I can know things like how many doors does it have? What color is it? And so if someone wants me to believe in a thing I can't know things about, I'm sorry, I'm not going there. But the real kicker came when the Huffington Post decided all the news places were grabbing my footage and getting away with it because they have news in their name. So there's not much you can do about it. Well, the Huffington Post snatched up some of my footage of something transiting the moon, and they got an FBI expert, and don't ask me what an FBI guy knows about telescopes, and of course the head of MUFON, and they they bagged on me. They said Crrow clearly doesn't understand his equipment. And by this time I had many thousands of hours of observation time. So I'll stack up against anybody at that point, particularly with the moon. So I went and I found a telescope optics expert, and we took every camera I had that I filmed with and the systems, and we calculated by the most brilliant mind. I've never met anyone who could tackle math and optics. We even went to the point where the CCD chips in the camera were calculated for stills or video, because there is a resolution difference. And we proved what they were saying, that this object clearly had to be a satellite in half geosynchronous orbit. So they're making the claim here that that's 11,000 miles away. First of all, that's not common sense. Can we see something 11,000 miles away? But anyhow, when I did the calculation, I demonstrated that if what they were saying was true, we could calculate a pixel, give or take a very small error rate, that it would have been 3 or 4 times the size of the supposed ISS, which I don't accept either, by the way. So that's how we got there. And when I was done with all that, it just cemented what I had come to understand. Everything I ever shot is provably, from my point of view, in our atmosphere, and as close to provable as you can get that it's man-made. And the reason is because we don't have any true, honest example of anything that's not man-made. So in my mind, you can't jump to Pleiadians or whatever you want to do unless you can tell me how many doors are on that car and what color it is. That's common sense, and that's where we need to reside, is in common sense, even at the risk of not getting something that could be got, for the simple reason that to this day people still think there's a Loch Ness monster and a Bigfoot. And it's like, come on, man, this world is covered in cameras. If those things were true, we would have examples over and over and over again. After all, I don't know how many examples of the so-called lunar wave. If that can't be rarer than a Bigfoot, I don't know, what are we talking about here? But that's how I did it, with an optics expert and the Huffington Post choosing to poke me in the eye for no good reason.
Well, maybe we should talk about how people were chasing down your footage too, wanting to put it in some shows. Obviously, there was some kind of validity being considered there.
Yeah, Hollywood came knocking.
For sure. And
sorry, we got a
probably...
lag. Go ahead.
That's all right. Yeah, no apologies. I remember you being censored on YouTube and those platforms way back then, and that was the first time that I was aware of that someone was getting censored for information on those platforms.
Well, not only, see, on my site, what John read part of, that was written in 2013. It's never been rewritten, and it's wholly about censorship. I have a degree in internet tech. I knew where this was going. But in the fall of 2017, they just flat out deleted my channel. And the third strike was over a lunar wave clip that I didn't even shoot. Someone else shot it and said, will you run this? Almost felt like a setup. But they deleted me with, I don't know, I had in the neighborhood of an admitted 100,000, which is a bit of a joke because I am frozen at 185,000. And there was a time when I was picking up 20,000 subs a month on YouTube. But everyone, when they deleted my channel, I just started posting everywhere that it was a modern day book burning, which was based on a thing Dave J said to me, which fits so precisely. I just reused it everywhere, and I started posting everywhere. They deleted 5 years of telescopic observation for no good reason. Well, lo and behold, Jason thinks it was about 3 weeks later, they put my channel back, and we think it might have been because of complaints. But it's a hell of a thing. I got to take 2 seconds and push this dog out. Give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how long it was, but we ended up having to run the hour ones that we were running on Crrow777 channel on my channel for a good couple of weeks at least. And lo and behold, just one day, his channel several weeks later came back. And I think if I remember correctly, the strikes were removed and everything. Like everything was like it was a great big reset. But here's the big problem. The internet searches for Crrow777 and Lunar Wave now started coming up differently. So there's something funny that Google does with the algorithms that ties into everything. and how things come up. So if you put lunar wave in, you'll get like a gazillion searches. But if you add Crrow777 in, which also used to give you a gazillion searches, after they did that to his channel and took it out of the algorithm, I suspect that has something to do with all the spidering and all that. All of a sudden it drops down to 30,000, 40,000. You can do it yourself. It really depends upon your location, because we've actually done this in live time where we've had different people search it and we'll get different results. But it's a similar thing though, where if you add his name in, it takes it down by a drastic degree. So that's a big deal, man. That just shows you that whatever is going on there, they're trying to censor it to some degree.
Yeah. It's powerful. True knowledge of web publishing or publishing in general. Guys like Richard Crrow from Autonomy and Mark Passio are doing these classes where they're teaching people, giving them the tools to correctly publish content. And it's extremely powerful in this day and age, because a lot of people are kind of relying on these platforms to store and promote their content. So true web publishing to get the information out there, especially in this day and age, is crucial.
Well, this is why we do the private website thing now. We have to. We don't have any choice. There's nowhere that we can go where we don't know from day to day if it's just going to get deleted. Well, we can't have that. I mean, the reason why we're here with you is because you know the quality of the content we put out. We're trying so hard to deliver show after show. Well, YouTube could just be like, now you're done, beep, and then boom, it's gone. So we have to pony up and have a real website with all the security crap that you need these days. I mean, it's just ridiculous what you have to go through just to have a site that it isn't getting demolished. I mean, literally anything could happen on a day-to-day basis with crazy people trying to hack in and do stuff. I mean, it's such a different world than it was even just a few years ago.
Yeah, they don't want the powerful tools of research, and they don't want people to know the Trivium process or how to actually use a powerful desktop and really search the internet via the dark web or other sources outside the firewall of Google and just the basic search engines. So they just want to keep people on their phones and doing kind of the controlled methods of, they're giving people these firewalls of just how to search information and find information. And in reality, you got to step outside that, and it's just a world of opportunity and power.
Right. I love what Mark Passio does, and even he's sometimes on these mainstream platforms. You got to have your own website these days, as archaic as that might sound, because you see what they did too. They built everybody up with this social media stuff. I mean, YouTube is such a disgusting example of how they manipulate people. YouTube started off with people making their own content, and you went there because you didn't want the mainstream at all. That's why you went there. Now I can't go to any video, whether it's the nerd stuff I look at, anything conspiracy related. I'm a musician. I'm a gearhead, so I'm always looking at studio gear stuff. I can't go anywhere on YouTube without having Fox News this and Fox News that and CNN and this news, all the quote unquote official sources. No, that's not why I come here. I don't want to see, what's his name, Tucker Carlson's pretty little face shoved in. It's insane. Like, no, go away.
Yeah, man.
So I'm admittedly a little late to the game concerning you guys. But what's interesting after watching Shoot the Moon is at that time, 2012, and it may be because of the Mayan prophecy, I definitely was looking at the sky a lot and observing some interesting things, and was kind of obsessed with the chemtrail thing and trying to like tell people this isn't natural. And you at a certain point, I just got tired of trying to tell people that this isn't normal. But I was just wondering, with the chemtrails, the official story is that it's climate engineering. Do you guys think that there's possibly something else going on, especially with the objects that you guys filmed around the chemtrails, which I had never observed? That I've observed things around the chemtrails which seemed weird, like weird shadows or dark like chemtrails like in the same path. But I'd never seen the orbs that you guys caught. Do you guys ever think that it's something different than the official story?
Well, different from the official story, yes, but Crrow is definitely full on maintaining that these are man-made objects. They're not little green men in there flying around shooting laser beams. But there's something up, and it's obviously some kind of different tech. The orb that shot the plasma beam, I mean, what is that? We'd love to know.
Right.
It's who knows? I mean, that's the only thing he's got of that. So it's not like we have much to go on. We just know that, okay, well, that was filmed. That was a real event. We know that happened. That is not Hollywood crap. So something's up, but what it is, man, we'd love to know. But as far as chemtrails and all that, I have long suspected that they serve a multi-part function. I mean, all that aluminum and all that crap that they're putting in, it's probably working in conjunction with all the horrible vaccines they push on everybody. This is just my conjecture. I mean, I can't prove any of this. But even with the situation now, for instance, I have been really formulating a theory on, like, well, let's just be blunt here. Like, people are probably getting some kind of flu with this beer bug nonsense, but I don't see truthers getting sick. Anybody who's even awake to some degree and avoid things like that annual flu shot that they shove down your throat everywhere you go. We don't take it. We stay away from that stuff. I don't know anybody who got sick. When I went and did the presentation at Flattoberfest in the beginning of October, well, that was like 400 plus people hugging, shaking hands, being communal and all that. I couldn't walk across the room without having someone hugging me or shaking my hand. So I was in complete, direct, close contact.
What about you, Crrow?
Well, what I was going to say is that the whole chemtrail thing, I was one of the earlier people filming it, trying to show that this is not normal because I'd been out in nature my whole life. Looks like Jason dropped off, but anyhow, one of the things he referred to the shooting orb. When we were doing this, it was quite common when we could see the orbs and we knew they were there. Either that or we filmed and we picked them out of the film. After I shot and then published the shooting, what we call the shooting orb, where a little orb shoots like plasma beams into a chemtrail. From that point forward, and we saw those with our eyes, they were not that high. They were maybe a couple thousand feet. We knew we were filming them. It became difficult to ever see them again. And from that point forward, the only ones that we did film was with a hell of a telescopic lens or a telephoto, and we'd catch them in the footage after we shot it. But it's pretty clear that the chemtrails are doing any number of things. And by the way, I've paid attention to this since before the turn of the last millennium. And I started filming early in the millennium. When this mask nonsense started up, almost everywhere the chemtrails fell off. So as soon as people put masks on their face, chemtrailing went down to a fraction of what it once was. And as an example, we have been in the 70s in Rhode Island in November. I'm wearing shorts all through the beginning of November. One night it started getting way down into the 30s. It was a crystal clear sky and there were lines all the way across the sky. And the next morning it was cold. And I think that that's part of it too. Last year we had very little snow and there was a lot of spraying. I think it's going to relate to the climate change. Oh, it doesn't snow very much anymore. Look, and it's ridiculous. This world is perfect in its delivery. Sometimes we have warm cycles, sometimes we have cool cycles, and it's all just a big manipulation. But the worst part about supposed chemtrails is I suspect it's directly related to the amount of people, which is a crap load, that get Alzheimer's. And I'll put on the record, we've had Clive DeCarl on. I've got people in my family who are no longer recognizing their children, which we can only assume is related to Alzheimer's, which we know is related to aluminum in the brain. Dr. Lugel's, Lugol or something like that, Clive DeCarl sells it, iodine. Those people now recognize their children and do not lose the thread, which further demonstrates because Clive told me the cause and how to deal with it, and it worked. So it's hard to argue with something that works.
Yeah, absolutely. Clive DeCarl is such a wealth of information. I had the honor to meet him in person and converse with him. So, but yeah, those are both great points that you guys made. And Jason, your observation on, I think you're right. There aren't that many truthers getting sick. I think this is an energetic war, and it's about a state of mind controlling the energy, the frequency, and keeping certain people at a certain level of consciousness are going to be the ones that are going to be most affected.
Yeah, I think I dropped out there, but just to finish up the point I was saying, I was surrounded by all these people and everybody's interacting and all that. We have yet to hear of anyone who got ill in any way, shape, or form. And this is nobody wore masks, nothing like that whatsoever. So everything is totally fine. And this was hundreds of people. So if this whole situation is really as bad as they say it is, you'd think at least one person might have a problem. No, not a single one.
Yeah, but yet we're supposed to believe all these athletes and celebrities and politicians are getting it right and left,
Professional pretenders, people who get paid to pretend
Right.
on camera. Is that what you're talking about? Those people? Yeah.
Exactly. All right, so can you guys, we'll start with you, Crrow. Can you explain the concept of the sky clock?
That was the word that I came up with because I realized the whole reason to do what I do is to communicate. And if people will not or cannot consider the ideas, then what I'm doing is a waste of time. And so much of what we do is figure out a way to deliver information so that there's a strong possibility people will consider it and challenge it. The problem I faced was I had all this telescopic footage, and if I used the word astronomy, first of all, that was associating with a bunch of things I'd proved are wrong in so many ways. If I said the word astrology, then everyone said, oh, he's smoking peyote now. It's hippy dippy new age crap. And so I realized at that point that there was really no way to get rid of the baggage on either one. And by the way, the two will never get along together. So I looked up and I said, what am I looking at? And I realized it all at once. This is the clock, the only clock we have here. And it has been observed and appreciated and studied probably more than any other thing anywhere ever. It's just that we've lost that thread. And so I tried to come up with a word that accurately described the importance of what we've been ignoring and how people have used astrology to make it look silly and used astronomy to misdescribe it, to convince us that everything's a gazillion light years away and spinning faster than 30-06 rounds, just all trying to cut through the nonsense. That's how I arrived at it.
And this goes back to the concept of there is no lie in nature. What is the sky clock? Literally, it's the clock in the sky. And even the dumbest of the dumb know basic stuff. They know that the sun's going to rise and it's going to set, and just extrapolate from there. And if you want to look back in time, this is what the ancients used to tell time. So there you have it. It's a clock in the sky that the more you understand the cycles, the more you can understand what real history might be.
Yeah, I know for me, when I first heard about the flat earth theory, which I'm proud of myself for thinking this way, my thought was, well, how would I really know? Right? I don't know, but I didn't really look into it. And then I had a friend kind of call me a flat earther first, because I was actually explaining some Mark Passio stuff and how the world is run by Satanists. And he kind of was pushing back against me and I'm not a flat earther. And I was thinking, well, neither is Mark Passio, but it led me to look into it. And what I do appreciate about that movement is the idea of just going out and looking at what you observe. And it's pretty crazy to be 40 years old and to never have really looked at the sky and challenged, what I'm being taught compared to what I see.
Well, that's what it is.
Belief is the enemy of knowing. There it is.
Yeah, exactly. So if you know that you're being lied to about so many things, why is that any different? I mean, the governmental bodies, that's what they do. They do everything they can to obfuscate. Something James True has been saying lately that I really like is about how the vaccine nonsense. Well, if a governmental body is pushing something hard on you and they're going to do it for free, and they're always talking about a eugenics program, why is no one putting those two things together besides us? What would you expect? I would expect no less.
Yeah. And that's one thing they love doing. I mean, everything is a perversion or it's inverted. And that's why it's so crucial to have that foundation in truth in the laws of nature. the principles of nature, because then you can apply that to anything and really kind of get to the heart of the bullshit.
Well, and what did you just say? You said inversion of truth. Well, that goes hand in hand with Mark Passio saying that the world is run by Satanists, because that's all they do, isn't it?
Yeah.
So our good friend Suzanne, we interviewed her a few episodes ago. She talks about you guys a lot and says that you guys have a lot of good information about lawful versus legal, and those types of approaches to dealing with the legal system. What have you guys learned with the different people that you've interviewed about concepts like the living man and the fictitious name, the straw man?
For me, it comes down to a few things where there's agreement everywhere. We found a lot of disagreement between legal minds at first. Now we're starting to find that there's some things that everyone agrees on. And if I had to sum it up, there's no free lunch. If you use things that add comfort to your life, systems, cars, money, there's strings attached to that. And those strings that are attached came to you when you were an infant and didn't know any better. And there was a fake identity, which will be used to manipulate you throughout your whole life. But this has been I recently went back and watched that old movie Rollerball from the 70s, not the remake, the original 70s with James Caan. And at one point he's trying to figure out what the hell's gone wrong with the world. And he says, it almost seems like a long time ago, people had a choice between comfort and things or freedom, and they took the comfort, and it sums it up perfectly. But the real question is, do we have a right to live as modern human beings and use systems and engage in commerce and still be free? And that's what Jason and I set our sights on. And in the last episode with KL, we got as close as we've been. And so there's the conundrum of our time, because all these things we don't like when the IRS comes bullying you or the cop pulls you over, you get summoned into court. None of that has to be. If you understood who and what you actually are, and really what it comes down to is was this man-made or is this nature? The people who are spiritual and religious and so-called godly, if they have not reconnected with the natural world, they have missed the boat. There's your creation. There's your example. And every time you step away from that, now you're coming into the man-made world of systems. And believe me, there is a price to pay if they can extract it. But most of it is offers made to you that you never understood was an offer, or you're being coerced into or fooled into accepting the offer. And we're starting to find ways that you can regain the actually godly living man or living woman you. That's where we've come.
Yeah, the legal versus lawful. Well, legal can mean lots of different things, and there's two different jurisdictions. It can get really complicated really fast. It's sad that a lot of the people who are looking into the legal thing get very, what will we call it, Crrow? They get very defensive about that their way is
self-centered.
Yeah, there's a bit of ego that can get into it, which is sad, but that's beside the point. So I think that there are there's basics, I guess you could say, to all of this stuff. And we finally, after however many episodes now, I'm not even sure, we finally found out, I think, what the ground rules are as far as it. And jurisdiction seems to be a big part of that. That's very important. You got to know where you're standing, right? What did even Jordan Maxwell always say? You got to understand what's going on. So that's the basics of it. Lawful is more like a karmic thing, like what's good and what's bad and natural law and all that. I mean, if you don't know in your heart what's right or wrong, something's wrong, man. What are you, an android? You know what's right and wrong.
Conscious common sense, right? The definitive difference of right and wrong, and that is the common sense that the majority of people need to get to.
Yeah, when we've been out, trying to get the message out to people, like, what are your rights? Where do your rights come from? We've gotten into this concept of like, some things that we consider to be rights are actually privileges granted to us by this entity called government. And like you said, Crrow, it comes with strings attached.
Well, everything does. Don't think of anything that's going to get handed to you that doesn't have a string attached to it.
Go ahead, Crrow.
Sorry, man. I need to reboot or something. I'm noticing I'm the only one with the lag here. But the main thing, it's really, you could think of it as commerce, which has been totally encoded to water ideas in the age of Pisces, which relates it to the sky clock. Right now, we're switching. And here's another thing, and I'll say it here for the first time. I've been saying on December 21, we're going to be firmly in the age of Aquarius, and I thought I could prove it. I still can't prove it. It's one of the most hidden things, but what I can prove is that all the language and the ideas are going to air. Earbuds aren't earbuds, they're airbuds. There's a new beer. Guess what? It's called Air Light. Oh, currency, that's always been water ideas in the banks of a river, the current, all the Admiralty nonsense. Well, guess what? That's going into the ether now, into the air. So everything's transferring over into air. But if you think about commerce, that's really the crux of it. If you're going to conduct commerce, which we all have to, if we want to live like modern human beings, then you have to understand that you probably, as far as I can tell at this point, need your fake strawman identity. So that sucker, which is actually just a piece of paper that gets fools you into thinking it's you, goes and does the commerce. But anytime you want, you're the living man again, and you're no longer the straw man. I think that's where we arrive, which is what Jason was alluding to about jurisdiction, the idea of public versus private. If you're in commerce, you're in the public realm. If you're not in commerce or other public activities, then you could be considered private. But to do that, you have to undo the damage that was done to you with the birth certified, the birth certificate, the certifying, the registering of the birth of the infant by the state.
Yeah, here's the thing. You could probably pull yourself out of the system entirely, but you are literally not going to be able to interact with anything. The only way you'd be able to pull that off is if you had, I don't know, millions of dollars of cash to lean on and have someone doing something for you. That's the only way. And otherwise, you're going to go live in a teepee out in the plains because you literally can't do anything. If you think about everything that you do in modern society to interact, it's commerce in some way, shape, or form.
I'll say this, we're coming in, we're into the new age. There's a new system and new levels of consciousness. These energies affect the majority of people. And so that's what they're trying to do. John and I have talked about it. It seems like it's going to come down to almost a breakaway society, the people that opt out and stop participating in this new coming system that they're implementing right now. And we're almost going to live on the outskirts of the control system. And I think that's a pretty big possibility.
Well, the one thing I'm definitely seeing as more and more people wake up is that they're going back to nature. More people want to do things like farm or at least have a relationship with people who do that kind of thing. Look at what Owen Benjamin's doing with Bertari and all that. Like that, those are the kinds of things we need to do. We need to start pulling away from all the damage that the controllers did over the past 150 years, where they started crowding everybody into cities. So you do that, you have control. You have smaller streets that can only go in so many places. You have to get your food from the supermarket, all that stuff, plus all the materialism that they've addicted everybody to. Look at what Christmas has become. It's disgusting. This is insane what they've done, and they've got everybody addicted to it now because it doesn't take very long, just a few generations, and this is quote unquote normal.
Did you want to add anything, Crrow?
Yeah, you guys are going to have to tag me in. There's at least a 3-second lag, so I'll just wait till someone tags me in. It's pretty simple, really. Everyone knows what the movie Back to the Future was about at this point, but that's what it is. We've got to go back to get to the future if it's a future we want. We have to go back to the oldest ideas, which have been scrubbed as much as they can be, hidden, removed, and we need to basically go back to the land or the creation or the perfection of nature or God, if people want to think about it in that way. And the real problem's going to be is if we do split away and there are two parallels going, one side is going to have all the nice, comfortable things we're used to, the new iPhone, the car. Can anyone out there build a car on their own from scratch without using some factory made parts that don't belong to you? You can't do it. And so this will be the leverage and the coercion to try to prevent people. They'll say, oh, you want to go live like a caveman, or whatever they might say. The point is that's where the systems are. The systems are in commerce, and everything that is modern and cushy and comfortable and convenient is commerce. And I would point out too, Jason said you could pull yourself out. You can, but it's worse, I think, than what Jason described. Even if you had $8 million in gold and silver, you can no longer put it into fiat currency. You can no longer use dollars, marks, yen, any of it. You've got now silver or gold to barter. And so you can see the problem that would arise out of that. Maybe that would be a better problem to have, but I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this question we'll go Crrow first and then Jason. How do you deal with family and friends who are closed-minded to information that conflicts with what we've been indoctrinated to believe?
You use the example of every religious tradition that's ever been, where you see the main figure of any given long-lasting religion is considered to be a light. In other words, it's that example that people admire. And you're an adult, man. You know what the next words out of your mouth are going to do. And if you know the next words out of your mouth are going to cause a fight, then why are you doing that? And so what I do a lot is I simply say, I don't accept that, and I let it hit the floor. Now, if someone wants to ask me, why don't I accept that? If I know my explanation's causing a fight, I'll just say, sorry, I just don't accept it. Now, if that person's not in fighting mood, and I can tell the difference, I might expound a little bit, but I will certainly tailor it to who I'm speaking to. But the example in common sense, when seen over and over and over, like I've got family members that used to bag on me all the time for doing the show. You know what? They don't laugh anymore. As a matter of fact, I know they're secretly logging in to listen to the show. And so you are an adult, you understand how what you're saying will be received. And if the main concern is not how can I communicate and get someone to consider what I'm saying, if you're not doing that, then you're wasting your time. And if you cause a fight, that's on you. And causing fights is bad karma. It's not helping anyone. And the truth of it is someone who's maybe not quite ready, you can say things that'll back them up 2 or 3 years. And that then is on you. So the main thing is be the example that people will admire and hopefully follow, or at least consider.
Well, I don't speak to hardly anybody from my past anymore. A lot of my family has passed away anyway. So my mother's still around, my brother's still around, and I have a half brother who I have a good relationship with. But none of them are interested in any of the things I do. So it just doesn't really come up. I do have some friends back in Pennsylvania where I'm from. I live in Louisiana now, that I interact with, but for the most part, it's limited to, wow, Star Wars really sucks now and things like that. It's just, these things aren't relevant to them. They are so lost in the system, and they're just very mainstreamy. And while I care about them, some of these people I've known for decades, it doesn't matter what I do. So it is what it is. Most of the people I associate with these days are more directly in my life and tied into the things that Crrow and I do.
Yeah, I think also just the work that you guys do. I think for me, it's partly, you put your work out and let people come to it as they find it, as they're ready for it. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a struggle to get into these topics with people who are so closed-minded and so indoctrinated. This is kind of a fun question. Where did the nickname Crrow come from?
It's based on my corporate birth name. I have a degree in internet technology, and I've been working in corporate America, making a living with technical know-how. And then when the housing crash came, I said I was done. And the business crash, I said, I'm done. And that's when I walked away to go eat rice for 5 years and film through my scope and just be broke, wondering where rent was going to come from. And so finally I filmed accidentally the 2012 lunar wave. I filmed for a year, so I had all kinds of stuff besides the lunar wave. And I finally decided, okay, I don't want to do this. I'll set up a YouTube account. Sat down to do it. There were other Crrow things there. And I started to say to my wife, maybe I should base it on my birth name. And she said, that's a good idea. But your birth name, each name sums to 7. So it's wholly based on my corporate straw man identity birth name, literally wholly about that. In other words, it's almost like saying, I made up my own name. I don't have to take your corporate nonsense. And it's kind of ironic because almost everybody in the world calls me Crrow now.
Well, it's really funny. You get every conspiracy ding dong thinking that Crrow is really some secret Aleister Crowley nonsense, absolute horsepucky, just because he's using the 777. I'm like, would you just get a life? You've watched like 3 videos and all of a sudden you think you know everything about numerology. It's like, get over it.
That there's actually more to this too, because I didn't totally think of Crrow on my own. I've been in technology since my first job after school, getting my degree, was at some of the earliest internet startups. I thought I was going to be a millionaire. I missed that by about 6 months. But when people wrote an email to me on the early times, they would write Crrow to get my name to populate. That's where it started.
It's kind of interesting because when I was watching Shoot the Moon, some of the objects that move in front of the moon kind of look like crows. They kind of look like your logo. This is just kind of, again, kind of funny going on that idea. The other day I was like interested. I wonder why they call it a murder of crows. So I looked it up, and I guess back in the day they would like name animals based kind of on their traits. So that's how you got like a pride of lions or a murder of crows. So they thought crows were kind of like evil spirits or whatever. So ravens are called a conspiracy of ravens. And those birds, those black birds, are all part of a family of birds. And the name of the family is Corvid, Corvid. Kind of interesting, huh?
Well, it's funny you should bring that up. Actually, the reason they're murderers is because they're black. And there is a whole myth about what Apollo did to the crow that used to be white. Apollo told a crow that was white, because all crows were white before Apollo fried them. He told them to watch his girlfriend or something like that. Something happened, wasn't even the crow's fault. Apollo got pissed and zapped him white and put him in the sky. So Corvid, which is also blue jays, magpies, there's a few birds that are in the Corvidae. As a matter of fact, they're among the smartest birds in the world. The New Caledonian crows can solve puzzles quicker than kids that are 6 or 7. But to get back to the point, there is a constellation called Corvus, and get this, at the moment I was born, Corvid was rising.
Nice.
I'm just saying, is there a connection to COVID? Maybe it's because we're moving into the air age.
Oh,
yeah, I know. I shouldn't have said it. We're going to get censored.
But
You mean see Ovid?
yeah, I was gonna go there. Well, no. If you want to, when we first saw it coming, we'd been covering Ovid. Because it's one of the important books to be aware of. It's one of the playbooks. So when that came out, we recognized the encode C Ovid. If you go pay attention to Ovid, you'll see just how much is drawn on. And the metamorphosis, or I forget which one it is basically the Romans trying to tie their beginning in existence to those heroic Trojans. So it's a false narrative, of course, like so many of the myths, but it does encode quite a bit about our world, and it is part of the playbook.
Yeah.
So Jason, your podcast, what do you cover on your podcast? The what's it called? The Secrets of Saturn.
Yeah, I came up with that because all this comes back to the controllers being part of this old Saturnian brotherhood, the Luciferianism, the Satanism, all that. It all ties together. So by calling it the Secrets of Saturn, we're delving into the conspiracies that plague our world, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I kind of came up with something at the same time. I came up with a podcast idea. This is before I knew Crrow. And then I came up with a music project idea. And I called the podcast Secrets of Saturn. And I called the music project Cult of Saturn, just so that if anybody happened to hear these things or liked them, they could look them up in a search engine and you'd find a whole lot more than just a podcast and a music project. It was my way of trying to teach without having to do a damn thing. It was passive teaching, really. But on the show itself, we cover anything that seems to be relevant, that hey, this is something we should probably discuss and get out there. That could be anything from history, music. We've been doing a lot of white papers lately. Wayne McCroy's really good at finding things that are very topical, and we'll have a 2-hour discussion breaking them down every Wednesday. We've been doing that for months now. So whatever is relevant and we think people need to hear.
All right, Will, you got anything else to ask or add?
No, I think in closing, I just want to thank both you guys for, doing the great work, and you've led me down many paths that I'm extremely grateful for. So again, you keep it up, and thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks so much for having us on. It's ironic. Rose just emailed me episode 275 episode image. Every episode image has something to say, or it's a puzzle, because I know that the bots can't understand it, which is why I've always done it that way. But Facebook won't allow her to post it right now. I just pinged her back and said, post it upside down and see what happens. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, guys. I really appreciate it. It was a good time as always. Hopefully it reaches a lot of people.
Excellent. Appreciate it. Thanks, Rose, for hooking it up, and you guys take care.
Take care, man.
All right, guys, and remember, put something good in the air and plant something good in the earth. Peace.
Cheers.